Okay, g'day and welcome to Diesel Help Australia. This is my own little personal workshop. I'm actually carrying out a service today on my SsangYong Ute, Actron Ute, 2012 model common rail diesel running Delphi common rail system. And this here is the actual fuel filter that I'm going to be replacing. Now the fuel filter is inside here. It's a cartridge design. What I like to do first is I like to, first of all, if you have a good look at the system itself and look at the arrangement, you've got pipes coming in here from your tank. You've got your pipe going out to your fuel pump. This one here is you return back to your fuel tank itself. And what I like to do is, before I actually take off any fuel filter, is actually make sure that I'm aware of the plumbing arrangement. Now there's a very easy system on this. There's only two pipes, one in and out. There's a lot of systems out there that can run up to about 4 to possibly 6 pipes in and out. Now they're very easily to get around the wrong way, so what I recommend is that you actually take a photo before proceeding any further. Now first of all, I like to just clean it off, make sure there's no dust in around the place. So I've just used a bit of mixture of 2-stroke, something like brake clean, anything high octane fuel. Then we're just going to give it a blow with the air line to make sure no dirt. Now the reason why I've actually done that is to actually make sure we've cleared all the dirt away from the area, because as soon as you expose these pipes, you're going to look at, possibly introducing any dirt into them. Now that's the other reason why I actually use some dust caps while I'm actually doing this procedure. So what I'll do is I'll go and get some dust caps that I use regularly on a regular basis, and we'll go from there. Now how these actual systems work is just a push button clip in. There's a push button both sides of the clip. Be aware they can be quite brittle in some stages where they're quite old on the system. This is not too old still, it's only about 5-6 year old vehicle. So what we're going to do first is I'm going to disconnect this, and then I'm going to plug it up with a cap. So what we do is we just clip that, and we push it, and we jam that in there. So we don't want dirt. But the other reason why we actually do this is to prevent or reduce the amount of drain back, the fuel going back to the tank, because one of the difficult things with diesel actually being able to correctly run correctly without any issues is to keep the air out of it. Diesel's a hydraulic system. It doesn't like air getting in the system. If it gets air in there, it doesn't run right. It's got the possible potential to log fault codes, can also lead to other problems down the track. So air is not lubricant, therefore it can increase damage to the system over time. So the next one we like to pull off is this one here. And what I'll do is just get the other dust cap for the other end. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the pipe off here and try to get that so you can see what I'm doing. Clip it in. You want to bung that one up straight away. That's your main one. You want to prevent the fuel from draining back to the tank. And then we're going to cap that one up as well, because we've taken the way the assembly is set up is that the actual top comes right off. Next thing I'm going to do is disconnect our sensor. So we unplug that, push that in. Now this is quite easy here. We've got 2 torque screws. There's one here and one over the back there, and it's just a matter of undoing these 2. It's quite simple. Of course, not every diesel is this easy. So what I've done here, I've actually removed my whole assembly just to show you a bit of an idea. It's a little bit easier to see it outside the car. It's quite easy to take out. It's a bracket with 2 bolts. And I've undone the screws, and I'm just going to lift that up now. And if you have a look in here, that's the fuel filter itself. Now that black colour, that's not a great concern. As you can see around to the side here, we've got the original colour of the actual fuel filter itself. So it's not, that's for 15,000 kilometres. I find if I do my services, I do my filter change every time I change my oil. It's not an expensive filter, it's probably about $45–50. It's well worth replacing every 15,000 Ks. If you replace a fuel filter much sooner, say half that amount, you may be causing just as much damage, because the filter paper itself helps filter any grime and that from getting through by expanding. How it expands is when the diesel soaks into it over a period of time. Now, I've had people where they replace them every 5,000 kilometres and seen their major fuel systems failing because they haven't allowed the filter to do its full 100% potential job as what it's set out to do. So there you can see, look, that dark colour. Yeah, I'm probably getting a bit of water over time. That's the combination of condensation as such, and also if you have a look in here, there's not a lot. It actually looks very clean in there. So what we'll do though is I'll actually, you can see it there, it's quite clean. It's just a bit of stain in the bottom of the container there, and I'll actually drain that out. I'll let it sit for half an hour. It's good to let it settle for half an hour. You can see if there's any water in there to be well separated by that time. Now when you're replacing a filter, you should always leave it in the box until it's ready to go on your vehicle. So what we've got here, a Delphi empty box, make sure there's no other seals in there. Comes with the appropriate seals. You'll see here you've got a seal. Comes with the seal for the actual base itself, or sorry, I should say the cover. So I've done, remove that. Just going to clean around the outside here. And we clean a lot, just has a bit of grease than last time we put it on. Now we're just going to evenly, so the seal doesn't roll around, you're best off just to run your finger around a few times. Let the seal take its seat. That's plenty. Bit of grease. Nothing wrong, a bit of petroleum grease around the outside. What you don't want is you don't want an O-ring to go in half not sitting correctly or dry. The reason why is if it goes in too dry and it grabs the side, you'll pinch the O-ring. Again, diesels don't like air getting in them. If you pinch an O-ring, you're going to get air in there. I also like to put a little bit around the top here where it goes in. Okay, we'll just put a slide a bit. It doesn't need a lot in there. Now for those who actually have a fuel filter without a hand primer like this, there are other alternatives. That was the rubber hand primer that I was showing you earlier on. What I've done here is I've connected my rubber hand primer up with some clear tube, and what I've actually got here is some plastic quick release fittings. This is a male end. Now these are particular size, like this is a 989, depends on what application you have, and you'll see the other end here is the actual the female fitting. Now, is one of the advantages of being part of the Diesel Help network is knowing that you have access to these actual quick release fittings. We sell these in kits called the Optimus Primer. The whole kit comes complete. We're in about 33 actual individual quick release fittings. Every size known to each manufacturer. There's probably a few that I don't have, but if you did have a special request, we can order special ones in. Now if you notice there inside there, you can see like a yellow, I don't know if you can see that, but there's a O-ring in there which is yellow, and that's what wears out in these things. Over time you'll get a lot of movement, a lot of shaking around in the system, vibration, engine talking back and forwards, and then you get dirt and everything and grime in there, temperature, rubber. It doesn't last forever, it becomes brittle and hard, and of course this is where the air starts to draw in, and that's one of the issues finding with a lot of diesels lately and not being able to diagnose that correctly. So that's why I came up with the Optimus Primer kit, so you can do multiple things. You can actually run this as a diagnostic check. You can use a clear line, you can check it, you can connect it to your quick release fittings without damaging anything. It sits on a nice barb here, and it also allows you to draw fuel up from the tank when you don't have a hand primer. So I'm just going to demonstrate that today on here. So we've taken that out, we're going to clip our we've clipped that in, and then what we'll do, first of all, I like to draw the fuel up from the tank. Now I skipped over the process when I put all this back together, but you can see it's all back in the vehicle. One thing I didn't mention earlier was that people tend to pre-fill the filter. You notice I didn't pre-fill the filter before. The reason behind that is there's no point pre-filling the filter when you've got a hand primer to draw the fuel up. People think, oh, it's much quicker, it's much easier. Well, no, you can actually create more of a problem, because if you pre-fill a filter from an unknown source, you're not sure what dirt's been in there before, you haven't cleaned it out, or you've cleaned it out with a linty rag, those piece of fibres of the rag can go in and get caught up in the filter, or get past the filter on the wrong side and cause an issue on the control valve of the pump. So I've learnt from changing fuel filters at a very young age, well before I was 10 years old in fact, in my dad's workshop, and I've never once been instructed to pre-fill a filter, so I'm going back from experience all the way through to the latest common rail diesels. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually hook this onto here. Well, first of all, I'm going to draw it up so you actually see the fuel coming up. There you go, you can see it come in here. Now it'll start to squirt out. There we go, so we've got air out of there. What I'll do is I'll connect this up on there. That will allow us to pump the fuel in. Now what I do is you pump it in, you can take this cap off if you want to get the air out, because you can't pump without, you can't get rid of the air if you've got a cap on there. So that'll help flow it through, and you'll pump it through for quite a bit. Now once you've pumped it through, it's actually also recommended that you put on the other side and draw the fuel through the actual filter assembly itself. So this will enable to get even more out, because it's hard to compress air back in. But you'll find once you've got it up out of the filter, you really can't pump it much further through the high pressure pump. The tolerance is a 0.0004 of a millimetre. If you've been able to pump fuel through there and bleed it correctly, you'd be a miracle worker, because it's actually not possible. So what I tend to do is we get the fuel, that's why we like to leave the caps on here to keep the fuel in that line. So we're just pumping up here. It's taking a bit of time. In fact, if I did it with the actual factory tool, the one that's bedded into the thing, it'll be already done by now. I can hear the air coming out. We'll see a bit of fuel splurt out. What I'll actually do is we're about to, here she goes, there she goes. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this back off here. Okay, and I'm going to unclip that off there. And I'm going to clip that back on there. Now what we can do now is we can swap these around. Probably going to have a bit of a mess here, but that's alright. It's alright when it's your own vehicle. I'm going to swap them around, and I'm actually, wrong way, swap that around that way. Therefore I can get onto this connector here, and I can draw the fuel through and draw it through. We'll pump it into the actual pipe itself. That's about as far as you can go with that. You pretty much can't get much coming through now, because there is a solid restriction being the pump itself. So if we were to, that will be as far as I need to go. I'm actually going to put it back onto the standard pipe now. The next point we're going to do is actually start the vehicle up. Alternatively, if you like to, you could actually connect your hand pump onto your return here and try to draw some fuel through. That's an alternative way. But if you've managed to cap that off, there should be no reason why there shouldn't be fuel, holding residual fuel in that pipe there. So the next thing to do is actually start it up and give it a few good big revs. Keep the revs up. That'll keep the air out. Then the next thing is you've actually got to take it for a squirt down the road. So if you go back to the very start when you did this, you'd be better off to do it after your oil change, so you can give it a few hard revs. Therefore we ensure to get as much air out as possible. So I'll do that now. If you do it properly like that, there's very minimal chance of air getting in the system. Still a cold engine, so you don't want to rev it too hard, but it wasn't completely cold. I'm just going to turn it off now. I'm going to blow away all the area. What I like to do is just make sure we clean the area. Something high octane because it's evaporative, that's what I suggested earlier. Just to make sure you got no leaks later on. Some more air there. It won't matter a bit of fuel, it'll smell like petrol. I don't think my diesel will be too offended with the smell of petrol on it, but as long as the petrol's on the outside, we're happy. So I'd just like to thank you again for taking your time to listen to one of my videos about correctly changing a fuel filter. So I'd just like to run through some of the basics from the start, important steps that you must remember. That includes make sure you're aware of the plumbing of the fuel filter before you actually remove it, otherwise that can lead to faults when you try to refit it and bleed it, and also may lead to faults after it's been driven for quite some time. The next thing you need to understand is about the importance about cleanliness. It's not just about keeping the dirt out, it's about keeping the fuel retained in the system. So dust caps are absolutely important. Anything that you disconnect any fuel system, you must always use dust caps. So the next step is to remove the fuel filter, inspect the actual fuel quality, and what I'll do is I'll actually grab my bottle now and I'll actually show you what our fuel looks like. It's actually looking very, very clean. Now it's maybe difficult to see that through the camera, but me personally looking at it, I can inspect it and go, wow, that is really clean fuel. That's almost clean enough to drink. Almost looks like Powerade. Oh yeah, love the taste of diesel. So be aware of some aftermarket fuel filters around. There are some good quality aftermarket and some terrible quality. So have a good look at the O-rings, the shape of the O-rings and the diameters. If in doubt, probably I would suggest you go genuine only. Then after you've actually got the filter in, important to bleed the air out. There will still be a small amount of air even if you use a dust cap. So it's important that you have the correct hand primer to draw the fuel up from the tank, and you draw it through the filter. So there's a couple of important steps. Once you get it up and running, you should be able to start it and run straight away, and I suggest you take it for a good drive down the road just to get all the air out. That way you should ensure that you've correctly replaced the diesel fuel filter on a common rail diesel. That can also be used when using on a non-common rail diesel. So it doesn't matter whether it's common rail or non-common rail, they just don't like air in the system at all. So thanks again for spending your time listening to my video. If you'd like some more information on diesel help, some of our equipment available, you can go to www.dieselhelp.com.